All right, APUSH students, let's jump right into the world you were born into. We're talking about Period 9, which covers the really dramatic decades from 1980 to the present. This is the era of massive change, from the Reagan Revolution all the way to the post-9/11 world, and it has shaped pretty much every part of modern American life.
So first things first, on your exam, this period is pretty light. It only makes up about 4 to 6%, so it's one of the smaller units. But, and this is a big but, don't let that fool you. Understanding the big themes here is absolutely the key to unlocking how the America of today even exists. This is where all the history we've been studying finally clicks into place and connects to your world.
To really get the massive shift that kicks off this period, you have to kind of feel the vibe of the late 1970s. The country was in this deep funk, this malaise, a feeling that America was just adrift. I mean, the economy was a total mess, stuck in this weird, frustrating condition called stagflation. Just think about that. Prices were skyrocketing, but jobs were disappearing at the same time. On top of that, you had gas shortages, and the Iran hostage crisis was on the news every single night. It really felt like the government was powerless.
And then, into all that gloom and doom, steps Ronald Reagan. His 1980 victory wasn't just an election win, it was a political earthquake. A landslide that big felt like a clear message from the American people, basically saying, we're done with the old way of doing things. It's time to steer the country in a new and deeply conservative direction.
So what did that message actually lead to? Well, we're going to break it all down by looking at 5 massive realignments. These are fundamental shifts in politics, the economy, and America's place in the world that just reshaped everything after 1980.
Okay, first up, the political realignment. And this one is huge. We're not just talking about changing a few policies here. This completely redefined the role of government in American life, and yeah, it basically set the stage for the political fights we are still having right now.
The genius of the conservative movement was its ability to bring together 3 pretty different groups. You had your military hawks, your pro-business small government types, and your social and religious conservatives. Now, these guys didn't agree on everything, not by a long shot, but they all had one common enemy, what they saw as an overgrown, overreaching federal government.
At the very heart of the Reagan Revolution was a complete 180 on economic thinking. For decades, the idea, known as Keynesian economics, was to put money into the hands of consumers, like you see on the left, and let their demand drive the economy. But Reaganomics, or supply-side economics, totally flipped that script. The theory was, hey, if you cut taxes on businesses and the wealthy, the suppliers on the right, they'll invest that money, create jobs, and the benefits will eventually trickle down to everyone else.
And they got to work on this, immediately. The new administration made some really deep cuts. We're talking $40 billion to domestic social programs. The argument from conservatives was that these programs were creating a dependency on the government.
But, and this is the other half of the story, while those social programs were being slashed, the defense budget just exploded. It went up by a massive $150 billion. So what happens when you cut spending in one area but jack it up way higher in another? Yep, you get huge, monumental budget deficits.
And here's the really important takeaway. The deficits weren't just an accident. They became a political tool. This mountain of debt basically put future governments in a box. It became incredibly difficult for any future administration, Democrat or Republican, to launch big new social programs, because the first question would always be, yeah, but how are you going to pay for it?
So, all that cash pouring into the military, where did it go? Well, that brings us right to our second realignment, the global one. And believe me, that massive budget wasn't just for show. It was a key part of an aggressive new strategy to win the Cold War once and for all.
Reagan's approach was a total departure from what came before. He started calling the Soviet Union the evil empire. He stood in Berlin and famously said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." He shifted the whole thing from a geopolitical chess match to a moral crusade. No more coexistence. This was about good versus evil.
The centerpiece of this aggressive new strategy was SDI, which everyone nicknames Star Wars. Now, could we actually build a space-based shield to shoot down nuclear missiles? Who knows? That wasn't really the point. Its primary function was economic warfare. It was designed to force the weak Soviet economy into a high-tech arms race that it simply could not afford, hoping to speed up its collapse.
And you know what? The strategy worked. The Soviet Union collapsed. And just like that, the bipolar world was gone. The US was suddenly the only superpower left standing, and it had to figure out its new role. Sometimes that meant playing peacemaker, helping with deals like the Oslo Accords, and other times it meant being the enforcer, like with the military intervention in Panama. But while the U.S. was flexing its muscles on the world stage, a quiet but massive revolution was happening back home. And that brings us to our third realignment, the rise of a new digital economy that was about to change, well, pretty much everything about how Americans worked and lived.
And this chart right here really tells the story. Fueled by globalization and new technology, the American economy pivoted away from those old, high-wage, union manufacturing jobs in the Rust Belt. The new economy was built on service jobs, and nothing symbolized that shift more than the explosive growth of retail giants like Walmart.
Now, this new economy created a ton of wealth, but it was not spread around evenly, not even close. Just look at this number. Between 1979 and 2007, the wealthiest 1% of Americans saw their income go up by an absolutely staggering 275%.
Okay, so what about the middle class? The middle 60%? Well, over that same period, their income grew by only 40%. The enormous gap between those two numbers, that is the story of rising income inequality, and it's a direct result of this new economic realignment.
And if all that wasn't enough change, at the exact same time, the country itself was on the move. This is our fourth realignment, the demographic one. We're talking about two huge migrations, one happening inside the country and one from the outside that were fundamentally changing the face, culture, and politics of America.
First, you had an internal migration. Millions of Americans left the old industrial cities of the Rust Belt for jobs and better weather in the South and West, the Sun Belt. This literally shifted the political center of gravity in the country. At the same time, thanks to the 1965 Immigration Act, a new wave of immigration, mostly from Latin America and Asia, began to reshape the nation's culture.
So you had this new America, more globalized, more diverse, more digital, and it was about to face a challenge that would trigger one final, profound realignment. This time, it was all about national security and civil liberties.
The September 11th attacks were the catalyst. They changed everything, and they changed it overnight. They led to a whole new foreign policy of preemptive war, which launched the long conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. And right here at home, they triggered a massive restructuring of the federal government itself.
And the war on terror wasn't just something happening overseas, it came home. Laws like the Patriot Act dramatically expanded the government's power to watch its own citizens. This created the central, difficult debate of the post-9/11 era, a debate we are absolutely still having today. How do you balance the need for national security with the individual freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution?
So let's pull it all together. Period 9 is a story of 5 huge realignments: a conservative political revolution, the end of the Cold War, a new digital economy, a changing population, and the new challenges of a post-9/11 world. All of this brings us to one final big-picture question I want to leave you with. After all these changes, what do you think is the most powerful and lasting source of America's influence in the world today, beyond its military?